Welcome back to Boring Build Friday. We're working on our 2016 GMC Terrain that somebody else really screwed up. So we fixed everything they did, and we fixed everything from this accident. So now it's time to start putting it all back together. We're going to put the inner wheelhouse in first. We can't put it all in one piece because there are some panels that we need to weld inside, so we'll have to put the skin on later. But let's get started. Our welds are already prepped. The paint has been ground off. I had the roaming gnome do that to keep him from roaming. So now we're just going to put our weld through primer on all of our bare metal mating surfaces. So basically anything that's in between something else gets weld through primer. It's not like regular primer, so don't go crazy with it. It only works where you weld. So now we're going to do the other side, part that's on the car. Use our custom masking system. Overspray isn't a big deal. This stuff wipes right off with wax and grease remover. We did prime the inside of that rocker there where we had welded, ground it all down, because we're never going to see that again once we get this piece on, unless it gets wrecked for a third time. With the luck this car is having, that's very possible. So now we can slide our inner wheelhouse up there. It's a big puzzle piece. Slide it in between panels. It helps to have a little help. So he's going to hold the back while I line up the front. Every time I tried to line it up, it just kept falling back out. So once we get it up there, we can clamp it up. And if it fits, everything should be in the right spot. We'll still measure it, but it's a pretty good indication. So once our panel's up there, we'll throw some welds in it. And before we can put our quarter skin on, I decided I wanted to take this piece out. Just makes getting that whole quarter skin in a little easier. So we'll drill the spot welds out, and we'll grind off the other spot welds, and then we'll break it loose. Pry it out of there. It's out. Pile. Now we'll make our cuts in our D and C pillars. Hopefully a little bit straighter than we made our last ones on our parts piece. I would normally take the parts piece and put it up here and scribe the lines on here. But since I did such a horrible job cutting it, this is a better way. So after we ground all our spot welds off, cut our seams, we'll knock this piece off. But we're not quite going to throw it in the pile just yet. Now we'll cut our rocker piece. Even though I saved that B pillar, I didn't end up needing it. So we're just going to put it in down here. We did find the end of their bondo, so we don't need to go any further. Knock this little piece out of here, and hang on to that one too. So we have all of our cuts made on our car where we're going to put our quarter skin on. So we take that piece that we cut off, line it up here, we'll scribe it, and then we'll cut it. Get our cuts in the same place on our part. Then we can set it up there, test fit everything, see how it fits. Our lines are scribed, ready to start cutting. We'll just cut them off with a die grinder. We'll clean up all the seams later. And the seam on the rocker. Use that little piece we cut off to scribe this one too. And now I'll set it up there, just to see how it fits.
slide underneath the other panel in the back. That's why I took that other panel out. Makes it a lot easier. You only have to slide it in between one panel instead of two. Get it up there and we'll clamp it into place. Now we'll put the door up there. And yes, making faces is required. It's in the repair procedure. So we'll latch the back, put our bolts in our hinge. Close our front door and hope and pray. So all of our gaps are right. The bottom of the door does need to come out about 2 millimeters. So we'll make that adjustment later. We'll just pull the pillar out before we put our quarter skin up for the last time.
Alright, all of our gaps are nice. Throw a little Bondo over our duct tape here. We're good to go. Still better than the last guy. Actually, we're going to take it off the frame rack, set it on its wheels, and then we're going to pull the quarter off and weld everything underneath, then fit it back up. I always like to fit it sitting on its wheels, because hopefully that's where it's going to spend most of its time. Hopefully.
So here's our gaps. We straightened out that pillar, just put a quick pull on it. That's why I didn't take it off the frame rack just yet. Only took a little bit. And our rear gap. It's a little tighter than the front. It's actually the way it's supposed to be. I just put them back how I found them. Well, not exactly how I found them, but how the factory leaves them. Except for some parts. Some parts I'm going to fix what the factory didn't get right.
We do have to bring our door in a little bit on the quarter, because it does stick out a little bit this way. That's actually normal for these Terrains, but it's a super easy fix, so we'll take care of it. So we're back on our wheels, at least the ones it still has. This is a little sketchy, just sitting on where the spring should mount, so it would give us about the same amount of tension on the whole vehicle as if it were sitting on its wheels. And it's not 100% sketchy. The frame rack is underneath it, so if it falls off of that, it's just going to fall off the frame rack. If it falls off the frame rack, you're not getting videos for a while. But this should be good enough. Our gaps didn't move at all, which is always a good thing. So now we're going to pull our door, our quarter off. We'll start welding our inner structure in, now that we know it's going to stay. And then we'll prep our quarter and throw that on.
So now we're going to take the door off again. Not sure what number this is for door removal, but off it comes. Same process you've seen a bunch of times. Unbolt the hinges and pull the handle and lift it off. Make sure you make faces. That's the important part. We'll unclamp our quarter. Chisel off our structural duct tape. And we'll start welding. Weld little spots all over the place so we don't get it too hot in one particular area. Just move around. And once that's all welded up, we can start prepping our quarter. We'll grind all of our paint off. We're not trying to do anything other than just get the paint out of the way so that we don't get any contaminants in our welds. We'll go all around, both sides. This is a good job for the gnomes, but they weren't around, so I had to do it. Probably one of the worst parts of the job for me. Just tedious and boring. So I'm going to make you watch it and enjoy it with me. So, after that boring part's over, we can do a little paint work. We'll put our weld-through primer on. We did prime the inside of the quarter, where we scraped off all of our foam. Because there was some bare metal in there, I don't want it to rust. So we put some etching primer on there, so our new foam will stick to that. just in case the foam doesn't cover everything. I don't want any bare metal exposed in there. So we put our new foam on there, the back side of the quarter, and we're going to slide it up in there. Our backings are in on all of our seams, so slide the back underneath the piece that it slides into. Slide it over all the backings and start clamping it up. And we're going to throw the door up yet again. Latch it on there. Put our bolts in our hinge. Adjust it a little bit, close the door, and it looks pretty good. Put our quarter glass in just to make sure everything fits. It's always easier to move the quarter before you weld it and paint it. Everything looks good. We're ready to weld. Our quarter's all welded up. We have a gnome over there prepping it for paint. So we're going to pull the lift gate off the other vehicle so he can prep that and paint it too. We'll unbolt the spoiler. These spoilers produce the required downforce to keep this vehicle on the road with its high horsepower 4-cylinder. There's one more screw in the center that we forgot. And now we got a couple clips. Just like that little gray one. There's more on the outside. So you push on each side, disengage the clips, work your way across. So you get to the last one, then you can just cheat, slide it off, leave the clip on the lift gate. Set the spoiler up on the roof. Take off that extra clip. Now we can unplug our spoiler, their brake light, and the washer hose. Now we can fish our wiring harness out. We can reach inside and press the tabs. Pop the little plastic piece out. We don't have to pull the rubber boot off. We can pull it all out of there. Disengage the struts. Pull that little clip out. You don't have to take it all the way off. And push up on the gate and pull out on the strut at the same time, and it'll unclip. Now we can unbolt it. We'll leave the hinges on the vehicle because underneath them they have the little glued on pads. So if we don't have to disturb those, we're better off. So now we can start pulling the gate apart. Pull the bolt out of the grab handle. And unclip the lower trim. We can start taking all of our stuff off the side. And we'll pull the latch out. Unplug it. And we'll remove the wiring harness. This is the poor man's terrain. Doesn't have a power lift gate. So we're going to have to change this harness. So now we pull our rubber baby buggy bumpers off. And unbolt our tailgates. Slide them out of there. Same thing on the other side. Now we can unbolt the finish panel in the center. It's got a couple clips in it as well, so we'll just pop those out. And feed the camera wire out. Our finish panel's off. Pull the strip off the top. Some more rubber baby buggy bumpers. Now we can remove the Terrain name. And almost drop the gate on the ground. Pull the wiper off. Cover just pops out and slides off. Pull the nut off of there. Violently shake the wiper until it comes off. Then you pull the trim off on the sides of the glass and break both of them. I got 66% of the clips out. Doesn't matter. These are different than the ones we're going to use off our other vehicle. So we can just toss them. Pull the rubber cap off. We can unbolt our wiper motor. So our painting gnome is edged out the inside and underneath the hinges for the rear door. So we can put this rear door up, and then we're going to unbolt the hinges from the door itself instead of from the vehicle. That way, it'll self-align next time we're putting this door up. We don't have to realign it every time. So we only have to put it up one more time and it should be much easier. At least I hope I only have to put it up one more time. I don't know how many more faces I can make. So now since the inside's painted, we can put our wiring harness back up. Clip all our modules in. Bolt the other ones in. And we're going to route this wiring harness all the way back along the frame rail, up to our fuel pump, and down to our subframe. We need to plug in the fuel pump so we can drive it. And we'll leave the subframe disconnected because we're going to go change that. Now we're going to drive it. There's a little bit of a learning curve. No brakes, plus no shifter, makes this a little difficult. I have to hold the shifter cable with one hand, move the shifter with the other, and steer. Luckily this thing has enough torque that I don't actually have to hit the gas. Otherwise I would definitely crash into something. So it took me a second to figure out exactly which way the cable needs to go from reverse to neutral to drive, instead of reverse to park. So we'll just slowly move back and forth between neutral and reverse. Then we'll steer it as we're rolling in neutral. It beats pushing. Without the interior in this thing, it sits a lot higher in the back. Must be that lead-lined rear seat. We're up in the air, time to get ready to start changing out rear suspension. First thing we have to do is pull the exhaust down, because it goes underneath the rear suspension. So we'll unbolt it from the flex pipe. This would not be possible on a vehicle that was in Illinois for the last 5 years. It's a nice Texas car. Comes off pretty easy. Slide the whole muffler and resonator assembly out of its rubber mounts. I'll remove the rest of this brake hose. Hope I got the right size vice grips. Once it's broken loose, we can just spin it right off. Pull this tire off. It's getting a little light in the back end. Kind of sketchy how it's sitting on the lift. Unscrew it by hand. We'll unbolt the brake hose from the body itself and set it off to the side. It's going with the suspension. We'll unbolt the subframe. Now we can unbolt the rear shock. Unbolt the top. I don't have to take the wheel liner out of this one because they cut a notch in it to get to that bolt. Now we can unbolt the trailing arm in the front. Unbolt the subframe on the other side. And our suspension is ready to come out. We'll let the jack down. Apparently the gnome never had a seesaw when he was a kid. So we'll drag that out of the way. We're ready to roll our new suspension under. But before we do that, we got to put our bump stop on. So we'll screw that in there. Brought the metric adjustable wrench. Tighten it up. Click. And now we can roll our suspension under. Slide the trailing arms up above the lift. And we're going to find out if I welded that bracket in the right spot. Lower the car down a little bit. Put the bolts in the trailing arm. What do you know? My side goes in pretty easy. I guess I did put that bracket in the right spot. I'm going to lift it up a little bit, get our springs in there. And we start lowering the body down. Keep lowering it down. And we got all of our weight on there. So now we can try to get some of the bolts in the subframe. Get the two fronts started. Need a little more weight on the rear. There's already a bunch of tires stacked up in the back. Apparently that's not enough. I guess I need a rear seat, but I didn't feel like dragging that heavy thing out. So with 3 wheels and tires, a gnome, and a bucket full of extra nuts and bolts, we had enough weight to get the springs to compress enough that I could get the bolts started. So now we can move on to putting the rest of our suspension in. Put our shock in, bolt it in. We'll go to the other side, do the same thing. Bolt the top of it in and compress it. Line up the bottom. And bolt it in. Now we can put our brake hoses back on. Bolt them to the body. Screw them in. Tighten them up. Put our brake cable on this side. Bolt it in. And put our brake hose on. This one I did thread the line in before I bolted it in, just in case it was bent a little bit. Now we can plug in our subframe. Put the tires back on after we bled the brakes, which was not exciting, so I didn't record it. But trust me, I did it. Now we can throw our exhaust up. Slide the front end into the flex pipe. Bolt it in. Slide it into its rubber mounts. Now we can put our e-brake cable in. There's one more bracket in the back to bolt in. Then you can feed it into the slots, clip it in. The upper cable just slides through, doesn't clip in. It does clip into this little bracket, so we'll slide that in there. Clip it in. We still need to change the front, so we can't hook it up just yet. But we're ready to drive. We have one of those fancy Terrains that has brakes now. And 4 wheels. Still no seats. We're currently using a Recaro milk crate. And we'll drive it over a lift. We don't need the ramps. And people say these don't have ground clearance. So now we'll pull the pinstripe off. Just slide a razor blade underneath it. This really irritates the painting gnome. That's the way I like doing it. Just slide the razor blade underneath it, then take some wax and grease remover and get the glue off, and you're done. You can use a magic eraser, but this is more fun. It's satisfying. So now we're going to pull our rear gate off. Pull that spoiler off. Pop all the clips out. We're going to try not to break anything on this one. Unplug our washer hose and our third brake light. Unplug the wiring harness. The boot came off of this one, so I just unclipped it. I didn't try to reach in. Wiring harness out. Disconnect the lift struts. And unbolt the gate. This is one time where I really do like electric tools. No air hoses to trip over, and you're not doing this by hand. And you can put it in your pocket, take it with you. Because I'm about to go put this gate on the other truck. Unfortunately, I'm not going to stop to move the camera, so you don't get to watch it. But trust me, I put it on the other one. So now we can change our front e-brake cable. The cover that goes over it, so pop that off. Unclip it from the floor. And we'll unclip it from the pedal. It's supposed to be connected, but well, that's why we're changing it. Pull the little end off that's broken. There's a little plastic tab that retains it. Push it off to the side, slide it off. Put the new brake cable in there. Push that little tab over. Slide the cable on and push the little plastic tab back over to retain it on there. Make sure it doesn't come off. Run it through the floor, clip it into the floor, put our little cover back on. And we'll go hook it up. So now we're going to start pulling our headliner out and find out if there really are any airbags up there. So we'll pull the A-pillar trim down, we'll unclip it, and unplug the speaker, slide it out of there. There's clips in the top, so that when the airbags deploy, these things don't go flying across the car. So you have to kind of twist them to get them out of their little tabs. Now you can pull the upper quarter trim off the passenger side. Pop the little caps out. A couple 7mm screws behind them. And then just pop them off. Put the cover around the camera and rearview mirror off. Unplug all the nonsense up there. Now we can unbolt our clip for our sun visor. Pop the cover off for the sun visor. And there's 3 screws underneath that. We'll unplug our washer hose. And we'll stick it up behind the sun visor so it's not getting snagged when we're trying to get the headliner out. Go over to the passenger side. Unbolt the sun visor. And we have a grab handle on this side. You pull the caps down, and unbolt it, and then rip it out of there. Now we can unplug our wiring harness and antennas from the A-pillar. We're going to take all that, we're going to stuff it all up behind this sun visor. Got some more grab handles in the back. Pull the little caps down, unbolt them, rip them out of there. Same thing on the passenger side. There's some cargo hooks in the back. Just have some screws in them. I'll unbolt those. And the headliner's ready to come out. We'll pull it down. It has some pretty strong magnets on it. Got to get them to come off of there. Usually when they do, they all come off at once. And then the headliner goes for a tumble. Now we'll just walk it out of there. And this is why I put those wiring harnesses and washer lines up above the sun visors. It's a lot easier when you don't have those dangling behind you. Okay, so who voted for no roof airbags? Well, you are correct. You win absolutely nothing. You didn't actually think they were going to do the rest of this job right, did you? So, they just cut out what was there. There's what's left of the airbag. I hope they at least used a dull razor blade like I do. So we're going to have to put those back in. Now we're going to have to pull the door apart. Get that ready for the painting gnome. We'll pull the handle out, unbolt the door panel, and pull it off of there. Disconnect the handle. Unbolt the speaker, pop it out. Go fishing for the door check.
No rattle.
Now you can pull the water barrier out. GM has some of the best water barriers. They come off pretty easy and go right back on. Toyota, you could learn some things. And bolt the regulator. Pull the door gasket off the back here. Pull the upper trim off. Pull our window sweep out. A little door panel clips across the top. Now we can lower the regulator and bolt the regulator. Now the window has entered the chat. Usually when they come down, they come crashing down. So we want to let it down without breaking it. We'll pull the regulator out. And we'll let the window down slowly. I had it taped up, but the tape came off, so wasn't expecting it to join us. Unplug the regulator. And pop the wiring harness off. Just squeeze the little tabs. Stuff it back in there. Pull our belt molding off and slide it out of there. And pull our window channel off. Pull the stationary glass out. Turn it 90 degrees. And lift it out. That'll allow us to get the glass out of here. Oh, we'll slide it out. Haven't broke it yet. Get the rest of the window channel out. And now we can pull our wiring harness out. Fish it out of there. And we still have the sensor for the airbags connected to the door. So we'll unbolt that. Slide it off. Now we come and clip the door gasket. You just reach on the inside and squeeze the tabs together. It's a lot easier than popping it off. You can get to about 60% of them. The rest you pop off and hope for the best. Now you can pull the trim on the outside off. That does those clips, you just squeeze each side. Get most of them off. Then we pop it off of there. Then we take the few remaining off with the molding out of our way. Just unclip one side, keep a little tension on it, and unclip the other side and they pop right off. Now we gotta pull these stupid trim moldings off the top. They rivet them on. They're annoying and I don't like them. I drilled the center out of the rivets, but the rivets started to spin like they always do. So we'll just take a nice sharp scraper and use it incorrectly to knock the heads of the rivets off. But don't worry, we're also using the wrong hammer, so 2 wrongs make a right. Now these rivets, we can't get our scraper in, so we're just going to grind the heads off and pop that piece off. I'll pull the top trim out. Slides over the seam at the top and pops out. This one slides up and then out. Now we're going to do a little exploration. Let's find out just how much Bondo they use in this door. We'll start grinding it out of there just to see how much there is. And I've lost patience. Even speeding it up, I can't stand to do this any longer. We're pulling out the big guns. We're going to remove body filler at an excessive rate. So I originally thought that this previous rebuilder might have had a regular job as a butcher. But now after I've gotten into this build, I realized that he was actually in the concrete industry. Because he would have required a cement mixer to mix all this Bondo and a cement finisher to sand it down. The amazing part was, all this extra Bondo wasn't even over a part that was damaged. There was a little dent in the back, so we're just going to grind it all off, start over. Well, I'm not. The bodywork gnomes are. I was just interested to see what was in here. So, this is about as far as I'm going. And the paint kind of peeled off, it was rubbery. I assume it was probably latex house paint. I mean, that is the kind of quality that guy was using. So now we can put the lift gate on. Got a little help from the pizza girl / afternoon crew. She didn't even bring a pizza this time. We'll bolt the lift gate on. Raise it up a little bit. Okay. You guys are always saying the afternoon crew deserves a raise. Well, there you go. She's getting a raise. So now we're going to bolt the lift gate up. We're going to take our time. We're going to put it back in the old marks. See how close that gets us. Should be pretty close. Nothing moved back here. Tighten it all up. We'll see how long she can hold this over her head. We'll take our time. You know, it's bad enough she's not wearing her uniform. It's even worse that she's wearing a CrossFit shirt. It's going to take me weeks to get all the chalk dust off this car now. She hasn't started complaining yet, so we'll put the wiring harness in too. Alright, I'm pushing my luck. We better end this.
So that's as far as we can go today. We're waiting on the painting gnomes so that we can put it all back together, and then we can take some more of it apart, and then the painting gnomes will come back again, and we'll put it all back together. Kind of how this process works. So Until they do their part, I can't do mine. So, thanks for watching. See you soon.